You're about to see a photograph you've never seen before. It's a simple photograph, a girl with a camera. But the girl is Norma Jean Doherty. And it was a camera that transformed her into Marilyn Monroe. These are some of the 53 recently uncovered images of a 19-year-old Marilyn Monroe. These are her very first professional photographs. These are the photographs that led her down the yellow brick road into the gates of the Hollywood studios. Most of these remarkable shots have never been seen or published before. They were lost for over 40 years, until they were purchased at auction by a consortium of 4 Canadian investors headed by this man, 37-year-old Greg Cheadle.
Well, the newspapers are reporting that this could generate $100 million for us. Our hope is that we may realize a gross revenue return, and I want to emphasize the gross revenue return of a little under $10 million.
And now, these 45-year-old negatives are being carefully restored and enhanced. And they're flying off the wall at the finest contemporary art galleries in the world. One can be yours for a mere $2,500.
We have had more calls on this show than probably any telephone inquiries in the last 10 years of doing business on Worth Avenue.
The photographer captured a sweetly innocent teenager, an unlikely candidate for the role of the most famous sex goddess of our century. But first, let's take a step back to June 26, 1945. The world was at war. The Hollywood canteen was dispensing coffee and donuts and dances with Dietrich de Havilland and Deanna Durbin. The king, Clark Gable, just returned from missions over Germany, and Betty Grable was the pin-up queen from the Fox studios to the foxholes on the war front. Her husband, Harry James, was more popular than ration stamps. The studios were churning out wartime training films, light comedies, and patriotic musicals.
We're going on tour. What do you know, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington? Washington? Hey, wouldn't it be something if the president came to see us, the chief himself?
Yeah, wouldn't it be something if we could get this makeup off our kisses before the war's over?
On the morning of June 26, 1945, an Army photographer, Private David Conover, reported as usual to the 1st Motion Picture Unit near Hollywood. But a phone call from his commanding officer was about to set him on a collision course with a 19-year-old factory worker. That seemingly routine phone call would set into motion a series of events that would change his life forever. He was about to discover Marilyn Monroe. Private Conover was assigned to drive out to the radio plane factory, a defense plant in nearby Van Nuys. A routine assignment to photograph some morale-boosting pin-ups of pretty factory workers doing their bit to help the war effort. Conover and his camera caused quite a buzz at the radio plane that day. Most of the ladies on the line lived in the fringes of Hollywood, dreamed about being the next Betty Grable. His Graflex was the glass slipper, and every Rosie the Riveter hoped it would fit. But once in a decade, or a generation, or a lifetime, or maybe only in a Cinderella story, it all fits. It all comes together. One magic moment. The camera and an image. This is the very first professional photo ever taken of Marilyn Monroe. June 26, 1945. It all happened in a flash, with the whir of a shutter. In 1/1000th of a second, Norma Jean Doherty would become the most photographed image in the world.
Marilyn, stop for a second. Keep going, Lou.
Mr. Grannon, I want you to help me.
I have a little sand left. What seems to be the trouble?
Some men are following me.
Really? I can't understand why.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
I can now retire from politics after having had Happy Birthday sung to me. Such a sweet...
All the way, keep going, Lou.
The highlight of my my life was singing for the soldiers. I stood out on an open stage and it was cold, but I swear I didn't feel a thing except good.
Marilyn, where are you going from here?
Marilyn Monroe would become the last great queen of the silver screen. She would become a fantasy, sex goddess to all men in all parts of the world. She would be courted by presidents, hold court with the Queen. She'd ride the merry-go-round, but never quite grasp the gold ring. She'd marry the Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio, and the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Arthur Miller. But on this day, in the summer of 1945, she had already been married for 3 years to the boy next door, Jim Doherty.
Norma Jean and I were married in June 1942. She had just turned 16 June 1st, and I had just turned 21 April 12th. When I shipped out, Norma Jean moved in with my mother.
When Jimmy had to go overseas with the Merchant Marine, she both lived with her and worked with her. They both worked at radio planes. I don't recall exactly. I would have to check her employment record. They did have a competition for Queen of Radio Planes. The winner would be one of the prettiest girls who had sold the most war bonds.
Eleanor Goddard is Marilyn Monroe's foster sister. The letters, photographs, and mementos you will see were the personal possessions of Norma Jean Doherty and are now in the hands of Eleanor Goddard. Norma Jean liked to call her BB, and we will too.
After they finished with some of the pictures, an Army company private by the name of David Conover told me he would be very interested in getting some color still shots of me. He told me what to wear and what shade of lipstick, etc. So the next couple of weeks, I posed for him at different times. He is now with the first motion picture unit. Also, he said that I should by all means go into the modeling profession. He also said that I photograph very well and that he wants to take a lot more. Also, he said that he had a lot of contacts in which he wanted me to look into. He is awfully nice and is married and is strictly underlined business, which is the way I like it. Jimmy seems to like the idea of modeling, so I'm glad about that. I shall be so happy to see you again, dear, and to see Daddy and Bibi because I love you all so much. I'll write again tomorrow. With love, Norma Jean.
In the red clinging sweater, Conover was convinced that Norma Jean should be a model, not a factory worker, and she agreed. He was granted a 2-week furlough from the captain of the 1st Motion Picture Unit. Norma Jean requested a 2-week leave from the radio plane factory. He believed he was going to teach Norma Jean how to model. He was about to launch a legend. Coming up, we'll recreate the Norma Jean David Conover sessions, reunite Jim Doherty, Jane Russell, and Robert Mitchum, chat with Sister Bibi, meet author Bob Slater, and the new owner of the $1 million portfolio that led to the discovery of Marilyn Monroe. Norma Jean Doherty wanted to be a movie star, but David Conover convinced her that first she would have to become a model. So Norma Jean and Conover embarked on a 2-week adventure, her first photo shoot in the mountains, deserts, and oceans of Southern California. Conover taught her how to pose, how to model, how to address the camera.
Great. Hold it. Great. Good. Big smile. Okay.
Conover mailed hundreds of shots to the processing lab. They were lost in the wartime shuffle. Only 53 images were saved.
I love this story. He would tell her what to bring in the way of clothing and lipstick, and helped her learn you know, posing angles. He, in fact, was the one who said that he really thought she belonged in modeling and that he would use his contacts to get her started, and in fact made her first portfolio. Cameramen, I guess most of them are like all artists, very perceptive people, and something about her certainly drew David Conover's attention. This is someone who belongs in front of a camera. That was really the beginning. Her very appearance, it's such a variety of things. It's innocence, vulnerability, so much sexual allure, but never of a vulgar type. And yet, in even the sexiest picture of her, her goodness seems to shine through.
As the days together draw to a close, Norma Jean sees a remarkable improvement in her work, thanks to Conover's daily direction. Norma Jean is in love with the camera. Conover is in love with Norma Jean. And so it ends. Conover is shipped out to the Philippines. Norma Jean returns to radioplane, and they lose touch. It was not until 6 years later, to Conover's utter amazement, he learned that the kinky-haired 19-year-old Norma Jean Doherty had become the platinum blonde bombshell Marilyn Monroe. And his portfolio was the key to unlock the doors of Hollywood. Marilyn Monroe's road to stardom was bridged by ironies, and here's just one. The captain of the first motion picture unit, the commanding officer who sent David Conover to radioplane that red sweater day in 1945, was Captain Ronald Reagan. Marilyn Monroe would become the most photographed star in Hollywood, second only to Ronald Reagan, and he had to become president. Marilyn Monroe and David Conover were reunited on the set of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in January of 1953. And it was there that Marilyn Monroe announced to the world that she was discovered by Conover and his camera. The Conover sessions in that summer of '45 had paid off. Norma Jean had a professional modeling portfolio. It was only a matter of time before she would become the hottest cover girl in the world. Cheesecake covers seem rather tame by today's standards, but as a pin-up model, Norma Jean was perfectly cast. Her natural innocence and well-endowed beauty were the right ingredients for success. Readers sat up and took notice. Editors clamored for more. She was seen by all the right people. It was only a matter of time before Hollywood would knock on her door. With the Conover portfolio tucked under her arm, Norma Jean set out to become a model. She signed on with the Blue Book modeling agency, Hollywood's best, and simply took off. Her very first national cover was the April Family Circle, followed in May by U.S. Camera. June was the beginning of a long relationship as a laugh cover girl. In July, she was the sweater girl for True Romances. And in August, the cheesecake cover for Salute. The Blue Book agency suggested she begin lightening her hair color. And for Laugh magazine alone, she modeled as Norma Jean Doherty. Norma Jean Doherty. Jean Norman. And later as Marilyn Monroe. She sold swimsuits in this Janssen ad and motor oil in this first and only television commercial.
Cynthia will just love that Royal Triton.
In Hollywood, in the 40s, there were more blondes per block than used car lots. Norma Jean wanted to be noticed, to stand out, so she became a platinum blonde. Once again, Bebe Goddard.
They gradually changed her hair color, starting about 1946. Later, it was made the very, very light blonde, which she herself nicknamed pillow blonde, like a pillowcase, you know. To my own personal knowledge, she did not have a nose job of any kind, but a very good friend, Bob Slater, I asked if he had any knowledge of that, and he said that she did have a small piece of cartilage removed from her nose and from her chin. In some pictures, people have pointed out to me that, but it does look slimmer here. Well, it could be made to look different by makeup, but an actual nose job, no, she did not. She did not have any cosmetic surgery of any kind, not body cosmetic surgery, as so many people believe. There was never the slightest need for that. Her teeth were gorgeous. The mole was on the left side of her cheek. It was a flesh-colored mole. And very often it was highlighted with pencil, like a beauty mark. In Some Like It Hot, they put a beauty patch maybe here, but her actual flesh-colored mole was right here on her cheek, her left cheek.
Norma Jean loved to take pencil to Conover's photos to experiment with the look. Bebe showed us her actual Conover photos that Norma Jean toyed with. A fuller head of hair, big, bright lips, deeply shadowed eyes, penciled extensions to her already lavish lashes. As early as age 12, Norma Jean and Bebe designed a dream wardrobe, little girl dress-up clothes for a grown-up with seemingly no identity. In July of 1946, Norma Jean Doherty walked into the gates of the old Fox Studios for the very first time. She would walk out as Marilyn Monroe. On this day, she was set to meet Fox casting director Ben Lyon. Lyon himself, a former screen star, took one look at Norma Jean and said, "It's Harlow all over again." He quickly ordered up a screen test to be shot the next morning and signed her up to a standard player's contract. It was also Ben Lyon who changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. In just one short year after meeting Conover, Norma Jean was finally in the movies.
Her mother's maiden name was Monroe. She was born Gladys Monroe, Gladys Pearl Monroe.
It was also at Fox that a fan magazine reporter entered her life, Robert Slater.
And the door opened, and this slender, well-endowed, pretty girl came through pushing a couple of big scrapbooks in front of her, and I mean literally the old-fashioned scrapbooks that were tied with shoestrings. And she caught her heel in the door, and the heel kind of sprung off a little bit. She dropped the scrapbooks, and I came to the rescue by picking them up and putting some of the pictures back in. She sat down beside me. We introduced ourselves to each other, and we made a date that night, and that was the beginning of a whole lifetime relationship.
Hollywood knows how to roll out the red carpet, and that's exactly what they did when Marilyn Monroe's first husband, Jim Doherty, came back to town. A former LAPD officer, Jim's now retired, remarried, and living in Maine. He's about to take us on a trip back in time, a reunion with two screen legends, Jane Russell and Robert Mitchum, and their role in the discovery of Marilyn Monroe. Jim Doherty and Norma Jean were neighbors on Archwood Street in Van Nuys. A marriage was arranged by Jim's mother, Ethel, and Norma Jean's foster mother, Grace Goddard. Jim and Norma Jean were married for 4 years. Early in their marriage, Jim joined the Merchant Marines, and Norma Jean spent part of their life together at his post at Catalina Island. When Jim was shipped out to China, Norma Jean returned to radio plane.
Dearest Grace, Jimmy has been gone for 7 weeks, and the first word I received from him was the day before my birthday. Her birthday was June 1st. He sent a cable night letter by Western Union saying, "Darling, on your birthday, a whole world of love." I was simply thrilled to death to hear from him. I have never really written and told you of Jimmy's and my married life together. Of course, I know if it hadn't been for you, we might not have ever been married. And I know I owe you a lot for that fact alone, besides countless others. That is why I feel I should let you know about us. I love Jimmy just more than anyone.
I love Jimmy more than anyone, in a different way, I suppose, than anyone. And I know that I shall never be happy with anyone else as long as I live. I know he feels the same towards me. So you see, we really are very happy together. That is, of course, when we can be together. We both miss each other terribly. We will be married 2 years, June 19th. And we really have had quite a happy life together.
So I'm back at Radio Plane Company and pretty contented. Well, I guess that is about all for now. With much love, Norma Jean.
She had been accused of all types of things by different authors. And they've stated that there never was any love in our marriage. This is a letter written by her to Grace, who was her foster mother. And I think that some of these people that have written some of these things about her should retract their statements or pull their books off the market, because they're not factual, totally not factual. They're fiction, and they're poor fiction too. So I would hope that people who see this realize that she was a tremendously good gal, not what some people have portrayed her. She was just a sweet person.
Jim returned to Hollywood to retrace those long-ago years. To get him in the proper spirit, we traded in his airport rental car for a 1940 Ford Coupe, just like the one he owned when he drove the girls crazy at Van Nuys High.
We're approaching Van Nuys High School now, and this is the school that I graduated from, and Norma Jean went to with B.B. Goddard, and Jane Russell went to this school also. I haven't seen Jane Russell since, I think it was around 1944. I haven't seen Robert Mitchum since 1942, 43, something like that.
I have never heard one woman who ever worked with Marilyn ever say one cross or derogatory word about her. And that in itself is monumental. Have you? Never.
She had just a tremendous amount of sympathy and empathy and feeling for people, situations, and she was always a little unhappy and mad at the big boys, you know.
Never a hairdresser, never a wardrobe woman, or never. You never heard, or a woman with whom she was working, you have never heard one woman say a cross word about her.
She was certainly not your dumb blonde at all. She was a very bright, sensitive girl.
The crew? The crew loved her, honest to God. She was a darling to the crew.
She had a lot of empathy and understanding, and she had a fey sense of humor, which was really very cute. And they all adored her.
For her loyalty, she was immensely loyal, to a fault, really, to her friends, to anyone she knew. She had great sympathies for people. She was really as straight and decent as you could want. You know, she was a very humorous girl. Actually, one of the funniest girls on The Natural that I've ever met, really. Funny girl she was, really. And, but she tried very hard. And she felt inadequate, truly, you know. She had physical problems, and which certainly didn't encourage her confidence, you know, did not build her confidence. But she was one of the most honest, loyal, earnest people that I've ever met, and generous to a fault, you know.
She did have a chip on her shoulder about it. And it's too bad. If she could have dropped that, she might not have had to fight so hard.
Well, I was her friend, and Jane was her friend. Very, very good friends. You know, she became like a family friend, really.
Yeah, that's old Curly. That's the gal I married. Hollywood is really a town of magic where people can be made kings and queens overnight, so to speak. I recall when Norma Jean to get her first contract, she had to be single. They didn't want a married person in there. They didn't want her to get pregnant. Today, they don't care whether they get pregnant or not, I guess. They don't even care if they're married. I could have taken care of her. She wouldn't have had this problem. I could have been her friend. I would never let her get this way. I would have taken care of her. Grauman's Chinese. Boy, if these walls could talk. I've been gone for about a year, and I came back from overseas, and Norma Jean and I came to a movie here. And we're sitting down there near the front end of the thing, and we're kind of cuddling and kissing. And this old gal behind us keeps batting the back of our chair. And finally, Norma Jean turned around and said to her, "Look, my husband's been gone for a year. And if I want to kiss him and cuddle him, I'm going to." And then about that time, the movie started, and there was Robert Mitchum up there. He's a commander of an aircraft carrier. He went from Lockheed assembly line to a commander of an aircraft carrier in 1 year. And I told Norma Jean, I said, "I know that guy. I worked with him at Lockheed, for God's sakes." And she just kind of giggled. Can you imagine that? And later they made a movie together, for God's sakes.
The Indians call it the River of No Return. From here on, you'll find out why.
All right, lie down. On your face. Come on, come on.
Marilyn worked very hard. I would go home after a day's work, and I was exhausted, and I wanted to go home and spend it with my family and eat dinner and relax for a few hours. She'd go and work with her coach until, you know, midnight sometimes, and then turn around and come back in the next morning. I don't know how she did it. Oh, everybody wanted to help her because she was a very sweet, sensitive, super sensitive girl. In fact, she got her feelings hurt a lot of times when she really didn't have to because she was so sensitive. To me, it was just a wonderful combination. Here was a little helpless blonde who was doing all the, you know, collecting diamonds, and the dame that didn't care about diamonds at all, but would rather have a real love life. You know, it was a good combination, and I knew that.
We're just two little girls from Little Rock. We lived on the wrong side of the track.
Little Rock, or Square Rock, these gals must have their diamonds are a girl's
Yes, it was a great book. Greater as a Broadway stage hit, and even more gorgeous, glittering, and hilarious on the screen. With Marilyn Monroe as Lorelei Lee, the world's most fabulous gold-digging blonde.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
And Jane Russell is Dorothy Shaw, the world's most talked-about brunette.
Mr. Esmond and I are going to be married.
To each other?
Of course, to each other. Who else to?
Well, I don't know about you guys. I always sort of figured Lorelei would end up with the Secretary of the Treasury.
Grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
I recall when I was a young officer on the LAPD, I was sent here at the premiere of the Asphalt Jungle, and I was down here to direct traffic. And I kept thinking maybe Norma Jean would drive by, but she was sick. She never showed up, never saw her.
Marilyn Monroe as Angela, the easy-living, green-eyed blonde.
Haven't you bothered me enough, you big banana head? Just try breaking my door, and Mr. Emmett will throw you out of the house.
James Whitmore as Gus, the strong-arm boy. A right guy in a wrong world. She sang of love just as she lived for love, like a Lorelei, flaunting her charms as she lured men on and on to their eternal destruction.
I'm the guy in 821 across the court. Can I ask you a question?
Well, I don't know. I suppose so. Are you sure you want me?
Yeah, you're the one I want, all right. You doing anything you couldn't be doing better with somebody else?
You want?
Does that mean come on over? When I stepped into that room, I ran smack into an adventure you don't forget in a long time. Because the screen has never shown this kind of woman before. The kind that reaches out in the loneliness of the night to a stranger passing by. I should have seen the warning of danger in her eyes. For what happened in that suspense-filled night was about to change my entire life.
Pat, it's 8:09. I'm frightened. I think something's happened.
You all right?
Yes.
Well, I haven't seen Bob since we worked at Lockheed, and that must have been 43.
42.
42, and I think it was about
42 or 3.
Yeah, it was right in there. And I think I saw you at the that nightclub in the 44, 43, 44.
Yeah.
Didn't you have that boxer? Was he boxing? Were you his manager, owner, or something? Oh, he was beat up pretty bad. No? You were just nursing him. You and Bob was taking care of him. He looked like he'd lost that night. That boxer did, poor guy.
Wasn't Art Aragon, was it?
Oh, Golden Boy?
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, we got some good boxers out there.
Years.
Huh?
That's 50 years.
Think about it.
Think about that.
How about them apples?
Yeah, it's quite a while. I know it isn't that long because I'm not that old.
Small world apartment.
Yeah,
It sure is.
really.
It sure is. Well, I've thought about this so many times, you know, and I've always wanted to get to see. I wrote you a letter one time,
Yeah.
but I never got a... Did you get it?
Yep.
Why the hell didn't you answer it?
He never answers letters.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
But if you cross Jane, you'd be in trouble. Where if you cross Norma Jean, she just feels sad.
Yeah, she'd cry.
Yeah. And that was the difference between the two.
She did not understand how to come back.
That's right. You didn't know.
I had 4 brothers,
That's
though.
what I know. I was going to say that
But
you 4 brothers raised you properly.
Norma Jean, you know, suffered a lot of wounds that she forgave because she never really realized that she had been wounded. You know, she was betrayed, if you will, by people whom she trusted.
Right.
You know, and she still continued to trust them and to support them, and that was it. You know, people took enormous advantage of her innate generosity and used her up. You know, honestly, you know that.
Yep.
I remember when you were working together, what was it, a Fox, wasn't it?
Yep.
And I had a dressing room around the corner. There had been Greg Peck's dressing room, and it was all done in sort of early American furniture and stuff like that. My secretary came in, she said, you better get rid of that stuff because there's not going to be anybody in here but grips and juicers, you know. And they'll sit on that stuff and break it. You know, just
Ruin it.
Yeah, get a big plank table here and a usable bar and not non-fragile glasses. You know. So anyway, I come off the set and she's in the dressing room and through the louvers, you know, she's whispering, you know, Bob, you know, can I talk to you to Gwen? And they didn't want to use her voice on whatever it was on some song. Anyway, so she played me this acetate test record, and I said, "That's a so-and-so arrangement, isn't it?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, it's got too much brass in it, and what you need is an instrument which gives you confidence, which carries the tonic melody." So that you can follow it, so that you're always reassured, because she was not too sure of herself. She had a very sweet voice, you know, very small but very sweet and absolutely true voice. So I said, I think the wood clarinet probably, you know, will carry you through. So have them rearrange it, you know, so that you have a tonic reference all the way through the number. And so she's writing all this down, and she did it, as a matter of fact, and they, you know, did it. So she said, would you like a drink? And I said, yeah. I said, as a matter of fact, I was just on my way around. So she brings out a glass, and she puts some gin in it, and she puts some scotch in it. She put some vodka in it. I said, what the hell are you doing? She said, well, this is a cocktail, isn't it? Isn't that how you make a cocktail? I said, forget it, honey. You know, I'll check you later.
Oh, no.
So a couple of times later, this is when she lived on Tahini, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so she invite me and my stand-in, Tim Wallace, over for dinner. And I said, honey, if you cook like you tend bar, I said, I got a pass. But she was totally, you know, sincere and innocent about it. She said, isn't that how you make a cocktail? She's putting all this booze and mixed up in a... I said, I got to pass this.
Did you teach her that?
She mixed my brother and I and my brother's girlfriend 3 drinks with 1/5. And she thought that's the way you did it.
Yeah?
And I said, it's nice of you to be even, you know, everybody got an equal amount, but that's too much.
Boy. She was going to cook. Oh, no,
She was a good cook.
I'm sure.
She was a good cook. She, her favorite dish, not because she liked to eat it, was to put a steak, peas, and carrots, because she liked the color.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I remember.
She liked the color. But she could make a lemon pie, but she had the cookbook out. She followed it right down like she was making a blueprint. And
But she got,
good.
you know,
Well, I'm glad that happened for her.
you know,
I made a lemon pie and put the knife in it, and it all ran right back together. I've never cooked since.
You didn't use the same book, that's all.
But they used to. They have a word now for this condition. You know, she used to get up in the morning, and she had a hairdresser up in Sunset Boulevard. An early appointment with a hairdresser, like 7 o'clock or something like that. So she'd go up there, and then she'd come back and stop in her apartment, and then she'd start to panic. You know, then she'd start to panic, and she couldn't go out. You know, there's a name for this now. You know, but she was just terrified of meeting people and being judged. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
She just was in the wrong business.
She was very shy. You know, she was enormously shy.
Tough, hard-working.
One final question remains unanswered. Who was Marilyn Monroe's real father? Was she Norma Jean Mortensen or Norma Jean Baker?
Neither Mortensen or Baker was the father. I think Baker was one of the husbands that Gladys was married to, and I think Mortensen was another that she was married to. And Baker was the one that was most possibly could have been her father, but he wasn't. And so she used Baker most of the time.
She asked Ethel Doherty, Jimmy's mother, to tell her about her father, sent the picture she had of him, which she had shown me so long before, and I did keep it a total secret. I never mentioned it to her. She wrote Grace a letter thanking her for telling Mom, Mrs. Doherty, and having her tell her, and she hoped that she would be able to see her father. She loved the picture, and so forth.
She called him. We were over there at that little house on Hermitage when she made the phone call one night, and she got him on the phone, and he wouldn't recognize her. She was very hurt very bad. So she took a lot of TLC that night, just, you know, comforting, holding, cuddling, and she'd come out all right. She's a good girl, real good girl.
Marilyn Monroe died in August of 1962, an apparent drug overdose. But the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death are still being debated to this day. She would have been 65. David Conover hardly profited from the Norma Jean portraits, although he did publish a book, Finding Marilyn, in 1981. He died 2 years later. In the summer of 1987, Conover's widow placed the negatives at auction at Christie's, London. They were purchased for $28,000 by 5 investors from remote Thunder Bay, Canada, headed up by Greg Cheadle.
It was a fluke, actually. I happened to pick up a copy of a Time magazine. There was a small article in there about this upcoming auction where these photographs were coming up for sale, for auction. When the photographs arrived, I still had this preconceived notion of the blonde goddess. And instead, here's this, I want to say girl. She was barely 19. She turned 19. Earlier in the month, these photographs were actually taken. She's fresh. She's a youngster. She looks beautiful, healthy, vibrant, and very much innocent. This is a complete paradox to the general preconceived notion of Marilyn Monroe as the sex goddess. And it was such a direct counterpoint, we were all stunned by it. So, yes, I do get a little emotional. We all do. This has become very important to us, well beyond our hope to be able to make a reasonable return on our investment. It's almost a cause now. It's almost a challenge to go out and say to the world, hey, there's at least the best half of this person you know nothing about. Come and see what the real Marilyn looked like before she was eaten by the machine.
The proud new owners gathered in sunny Florida
That's good.
for the first ever showing of the Discovery photographs at the exclusive Palm Beach gallery of Bruce E. Lander.
A photograph like this, for example, which is one of the very first photographs ever taken of Norma Jean, literally with the identification card, makes this an extraordinary historical document. The technical aspects of a photograph like this from film that was taken in 1945 and developed and basically stayed in storage for so many years, it's really extraordinary that a photograph has been printed with this kind of remarkable quality. There are many, many clients, for example, who've called us asking what is the deal for a full portfolio, $45,000. We are 55 minutes till showtime. Let's go.